tax reform. The bill now in the hands of the Senate. Several senators, like those on your screen, Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, Ron Johnson, etc., 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 taking issue with the tax plan. Here's the question. Who will spoil it? Heritage Foundation President Edwin Feulner is here. Do you think all of the people we just put up on the screen, those senators, are they all going to say no?
No, Stuart, I don't think they are. I think eventually the Senate's going to come around. They're back home this week. They're talking to their own constituents. Ron Johnson, I hope, is hearing that, hey, small business tax cuts are essential. Right now in Canada, with a left-wing government, we've got them reducing taxes on small business from an already very low 10.5% down to 9%. And that's under Mr. Trudeau, not some big conservative. So we've got to stay competitive. We've got to do what we should do on small business. Jeff Flake is a good free marketeer. I think he'll come around. Susan Collins is, I think, convincible. I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen next week. And we're going to then have to figure out whether the House or the Senate version's better.
I find it inconceivable that those senators like Jeff Flake and John McCain and Bob Corker, I find it inconceivable that they would vote against tax cuts, sink the Republican Party because they have a personal beef with the president. How about you?
That's exactly what it comes down to, and what they ought to be doing instead of thinking about Donald Trump and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they ought to be thinking about their own constituents and what Art Laffer just said to you in terms of economic growth, so all ships are basically rising, and so that this really is working to better the American citizens.
We've got Goldman Sachs coming out with a couple of reports saying that next year growth is going to be nice and strong, that the unemployment rate next year will come down to about 3.7%, I think they're saying, and that wages will rise. That's a pretty rosy outlook for next year, whether or not we get a tax cut. Are you on board with that things are going very, very nicely?
I think they're going very well, and a good bit of it has to do with the fact that this administration is doing its very best to disband the regulatory state, to get rid of so many regulations that have been hampering business, both big and small, and slowing down economic growth for everybody in the economy. And that's really almost as important in my mind as tax cuts, because regulation has stifled the economy, stifled innovation, and we've got to get back in the right track on that whole front, too.
Now, the left is dismissing this, the whole tax idea, the whole idea of cutting taxes. They're dismissing it out of hand, saying it's just a giveaway to rich people and rich corporations. You say what?
I say that's absolutely wrong, that the more corporate taxes particularly are cut, the more incentive there is then to rebuild and build more infrastructure, to build more productive capabilities throughout the economy. And the more of those you have, the more jobs you're creating. That's what it's all about. How do we get the economy really moving again the way you're talking and the way others are talking about for next year? It's going to bring up other problems, though. You know, if we end up with too low unemployment, that's going to start calling into question what's going on with our whole education system, and how do we make that better so that, frankly, some of the dropouts in the economy are able to get full and reasonable employment at decent wages. So we've always got challenges to face, but we're moving the right way.
I've said that there is a 90% chance that we get the deal done this year. What do you say?
I'm with you, my friend. 90%, and remember what Ronald Reagan said, if I can get 70% of what I want right now, I'll come back for the other 30% later. And I think 90% is going to be, we're going to have at least 80% of what we want.
I'm mixing up all these percentages, but I think I get the point. We're going to get a deal, and we'll come back and get what we don't get later. Ed Feulner, thanks very much for joining us, sir. Much obliged. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.